Warning. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
If you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. And then I said, now that means I got work to do.
What it do, family and friends? Welcome back to the Church of Black Power. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you can be notified whenever videos like this drop. Please make sure you're hitting that like and share button so we can beat up the algorithm. Make sure we get this message out to the ears that need to hear. And if you have not done so yet, please make sure you click that link in the description, go to change.org and put your signature on the petition for reparations. And with that being said, family, over the weekend, one of our Grandmaster teachers passed away, went on to freedom, went up yonder. And so today, we're going to celebrate his life and we're going to celebrate his works. And we're going to talk about some of the things that he believed, some of the things that he put into the National Black Lexicon that still sticks around to this day. When I first heard about Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Neely Fuller Jr., it was through listening to an interview with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And she spoke about Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. And I always heard her speaking about, well, I grew up younger. I'm younger than when she started. But when I was growing up and I started listening to her, I had listened to her for maybe about a year, maybe a year and a half. And I would hear her speak about the system of white supremacy. And that was the first time I ever heard somebody refer to white supremacy as a system. And then Tariq Nasheed put out, I believe it was The Fifth Hidden Colors. The Fifth Hidden Colors. It wasn't right after, but I'm just tying everything together. When Tariq Nasheed put out Hidden Colors, the system of white supremacy, the religion of white supremacy, I gravitated towards it because of my knowledge of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and the way she explained white supremacy as a system to me. And after which, I started really getting deeper into her older interviews. And that's when I came across this interview here.
If we spend a lot of time in the coming days and weeks understanding that small bits of behavior can begin to counter racism, and Neely Fuller in his work Textbook for Victims of Racism, which everybody should have at least 5 copies of, he talks about small behaviors that are very powerfully significant if people practice those behaviors just as individuals and by individual choice, united independent choice. They begin to counter the system. And some of those behaviors are stop name-calling one another, stop gossiping about one another, stop squabbling with one another, stop cursing one another, stop being discourteous and disrespectful to one another, stop stealing from one another, stop robbing one another, stop fighting one another, and stop killing one another. Can you just imagine if black people, just as individuals, are thinking about what can I do about the system of racism, white supremacy? Oh, I'm going to select one or two of the behaviors recommended in the work of Neely Fuller Jr. I'm going to select what I'm going to be practicing in the next few weeks.
Family, the areas that Dr. Fuller, he basically identified, there was 9 activities that people engage in their everyday lives that shape their lives. And those areas was economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. These areas represented basically the domains where oppression was most often experienced, in his opinion. He argues that understanding these areas are interrelated. If you can understand that, then that's critical to making lasting changes in one's life, but also within society. And this isn't really about anybody else, but I want to tie an example into this. When people come here to America, whether black immigrant or any other immigrant, they think that they can join the system of white supremacy. They think that they can actually weasel their way into the system so they can be like the dominant class who runs these systems. The unfortunate thing is, like Neely Fuller said, and he coined this phrase, if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it operates, then everything you do will confuse you. So you see these kinds of people, and they come here thinking that they can buddy and snuggle up to white supremacists, not understanding that the system of white supremacy is against them. And since they don't recognize or understand how these things are critically linked together, they end up always getting a wake-up call. They end up always getting a wake-up call. Another thing that Dr. Fuller believed in and that he wrote about was racial and social justice through compensatory code. And basically what compensatory code represents is the different guidelines and principles aimed at helping black people break free from the harm caused by systematic racism. So the code promotes thought patterns and actions that lead to like mental, emotional, and practical liberation. That's basically what it is. Being aware of racism is key. And if you're not aware of racism, then you will always have issues within those areas, whether mental, emotional, practical, physical, can add that in there too. But that's the difference between us and everyone else who comes to this country. We live in the belly of the beast, and we understand white supremacy the most. And this kind of got me choked up because a few videos ago, I was having this same conversation with you guys. I was speaking about how we understand white supremacy overall, and most of these other people do not. And I spoke about Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. and how he was still alive given the game. So I'm kind of choked up about this, family. Another thing that he spoke about was counter-racism as a systematic approach. Basically having a coherent response to white supremacy rather than acting reactively, right? He said that people should build a strategic approach that is rooted, that's rooted in clarity and purpose in your daily actions. And just by doing that, it involves questioning and confronting the established norms and systems that perpetuate racial injustice. And those who know that Neely Fuller was all about abolishing the system of white supremacy and replacing it with a system of justice. Now there's, I think, 4 other areas I want to talk about, but before we get there, I want you to hear our Grandmaster Teacher, our elder, in his own words.
Very simple. By simply realizing that you're in a system of racism and you're in captivity. Now, that doesn't say anything about you can't be dignified if you want to be, but you are a dignified prisoner of war. And what's the difference between a dignified slave and a silly one? One is dignified and one is silly. But they're both prisoners of war once they're captured. See, you're a prisoner of war. Racism is war. It's war, the greatest war that was ever conducted among the people of what we call the planet Earth. There's no war that's been greater than the establishment and the maintenance and the refinement of the system of white supremacy. It's a continuation of a war, the greatest war that ever was. That's the war between those who believe in racism and those who don't. And so far, the racists have been winning that war. So it's just a matter of the people who are the victims of it realizing this and saying, well, we're going to fight against it. But we're in captivity already, so you got to fight. There's no such thing as fighting from the outside. There's no such thing as outside. So you fight from the inside of the prison. Like prisoners of war are always trying to escape the prison. But this is a prison that you can't escape from. You have to dismantle the prison itself and replace it with a system of justice. That's the goal. And what does justice mean? It means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most, like yourself, gets the most constructive help. That's not happening in the system of racism, and it won't happen. So you won't get discouraged simply by realizing what your circumstances are, because now you have something to aim for. Get rid of the system of racism. That should be your reason for being. If you have any other priority, then it's not logical for you to be doing anything else. Everything that you're doing is supposed to be aimed toward replacing the system of racism with the system of justice. Why? Because it is the greatest oppressive system ever invented in the minds of people here on this planet. Nothing has been greater than that.
Another thing that our brother wrote about was a focus on nonviolence and building community with each other as black folk. It was not about accepting oppression, but rather outsmarting and outmaneuvering the system of injustice with intelligence and discipline. Another thing that he spoke about was self-empowerment through knowledge in education. And he really stressed the importance of self-education. You know, before Neely Fuller, somebody that I used to quote all the time that basically speaks towards what he just said, or what he was speaking about with the importance of self-education, was a Mark Twain quote where it says, "I will never let any school interfere with my education." And that was so important to me because I was actually a dropout. I dropped out of high school due to the system of white supremacy and being treated a certain way, and the school didn't take up for me as a student. They actually, sided with the racist teacher. And so I dropped from school. I got, a high school equivalent and went back to school that way. But my whole thing after I dropped out of school was I wasn't dropping out of school just to be stupid. Especially because, Hidden Colors came around, the conscious movement got kicked off, and I was one of the biggest advocators and voices for the conscious movement at the time. I kicked off my series before the whitewash, and it was on Vine, back when Vine was really big. And I was one of the biggest creators on Vine that started talking about history first. And then I took that 6 seconds that Vine used to give you and compounded it with as much information as humanly possible and made it entertaining with the different styles of music that I was putting behind it. You can still check that out. I'm pretty sure you can pull it up, hashtag before the whitewash, or either before the whitewash or after the whitewash. It was so long ago. But that came due to me seeing Hidden Colors. That came to me due to me wanting to know my history, wanting to know about the system of white supremacy, how it works and how it operates. So I agree with him 100-fold when I seen that he put the emphasis on self-education, not just education, because there's a difference between education and indoctrination. You could be indoctrinated and be uneducated. You can be indoctrinated and still be uneducated. You can have a degree, but still be uneducated. Another thing that he spoke about was the power of language and communication, how we have to define our words and understand the words that we use. We have to be able to have the proper language to counteract racism. That's what even Tariq speaks about it. The language is very important because people play games with weasel words. They use weasel words to confuse you. And once you're confused, that's it. That's it. And he spoke about how language could be used to either reinforce or dismantle negative beliefs that perpetuate racial prejudice and stereotypes. And what we're seeing nowadays, you're seeing how they're using black faces to perpetuate these negative stereotypes, but they're not black American faces, they're black immigrant faces, perpetuating these same racial prejudice. But then when they get their wake-up call, like how the Haitians got when Trump said they're eating the dogs and eating the cats, then there's a problem. Then there's a problem. But see, we understand this because we actually fight the system of white supremacy, and they're trying to basically cuddle up to it. And another thing that he spoke about was the goal. The goal being, independent and unified survival. Like, it's self-sufficient, unified black communities that don't rely on anything outside of each other. Like, that's just what it is. So Neely Fuller's works are very important within our movement and in our history. Neely Fuller has put in, and like I said, I've been messing up a little bit, stuttering left and right, because this is a harder topic for me to get through. Our elders put in the work. We stand on the shoulders of greatness. And even though we know that the work will live on, it gets tougher and tougher to see the real ones go out while watching people like Roland Martin still walking around. It's a tough one, family. It's a tough one for me. So please bear with me. There's only a couple more things and we'll be out of here. I want to show you that our brother's work will live on, especially through creators who respect him, who love him, and want to make sure the message gets out there to the ears that need to hear. I want to give a salute to Hip Hop Cartoons for helping Neely Fuller Jr.'s Dr. Neely Fuller Jr.'s message reach a whole new audience.
Every black person on the planet who has been exposed to white supremacy, and the assumption is every black person on the planet has been, even when they haven't been in contact with white people directly. They've been exposed to the white culture indirectly. White culture is about white supremacy. Now, what does white supremacy do? It teaches people of color that if you are a male, you cannot be a man, period. Not in the system of white supremacy. And you're not going to be treated like a man, ever. Now, you can walk around and think that you're a man, but that's between you and you, strictly between you and yourself, because no white person has an obligation, if you're a black male, to treat you like you are a man. And it's logical simply because in the system of white supremacy, it's impossible for a black male to be a man. It doesn't make any difference how old he gets or what he knows or what kind of connections. That can't be done. I just start with myself. I'm not eligible, not qualified to be a man. Why? Because I was born in captivity, that's why. When you're in captivity, when you're a prisoner of war, you are strictly that and nothing else. A prisoner of war, a victim of white supremacy. And you don't have another title. You can give yourselves all kinds of titles, which is why black people love titles. We give ourselves all kinds of titles. We give each other all kinds of titles. Some titles, it's not as bad as it was in the old days. I say bad, if you want to use that word. But some people used to say professor, reverend, most high. I mean, before you ever get to a name, you would have about 40 titles. You know, when somebody introduces you, if you're supposed to be what you call a big shot Negro in the old days. This is not new. This goes way back. That struggle. Oh, I'd just love to be a man. I mean, what can it take? But by this generation, what you call the new millennia, most young black people have looked around. They have looked at the people that came before them, who since the 1960s, the white supremacists have done a rough job on black malehood. First of all, giving them an option that you can continue to be a big boy Or if you really want to get some material benefits, put on some gold slippers and skip around, and grin all the time and all like that, and have a little money in your pocket. Now, you can be a black girl if you're a black male. You can be a black girl, but you cannot be a man. You will never be a man in the system of white supremacy. Now, they have put that in cement. They have written, or rather in steel, or whatever the hardest subject, a diamond. The white supremacists have put that philosophy out here since the 1970s. That's the benchmark that I give it. All over the world, and they're spreading it. They're saying, you're not going to be a man. You're a black male, and you think you're going to be a man on my watch? On my watch? This is the voice of the white supremacists now. Racist man and racist woman. Say, that's not going to happen. Say, now Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad and all of that, they said that that's what they're going to make you out of. But it's not going to happen. Now, you can talk it, but you make any move to make that real, and you're going to wonder what fell on you. Now, they have made that clear to all of us, and the young black people have picked up that signal, and they say, well, if I can't be a man and I don't want to be like my sisters, I don't want to switch around all day looking for a male, and I pretend to be a female or try to switch over and be one, if they can operate on me and make me one, because then things become easier. I guess, I hope, but I definitely can't be a man because I'm in big trouble if I try to be. Then what can I be? Well, the white supremacist said, well, I'll give you another outside option. You can go around and pretend that you're a man by doing harm to other black people. That's cursing out black females, calling them names and all like that. Write songs about them where you call them all kinds of names and kick them all up and down the street. We don't care about that. Kick your mother up and down the street. We rejoice when we see you do that, okay? But if you start acting anything like you ask for respect from us, the white supremacists, boy, you're going to get dead real quick. Most black males, we know that because they teach us that in no uncertain terms. When we really start asserting ourselves and say, you're going to respect me as a man. And the white supremacists said, you tell that to other black people. But don't you get in my face ever, boy, and act like you're even thinking like that, dealing with me. Now, I'll play with you for a little while. I'll laugh and joke with you. But if you get serious and think that you're going to be a man, and when I'm here, because there ain't but one man in this house, and when I say house, I mean the entire planet Earth. Anytime you think with your black self, you're going to be a man in my presence, you got another thing coming. Now, like I said, I'll play with you. I'll kid around with you. I'll joke with you. I'll play some ball games with you and all like that. Don't you ever think that you're a man. You're a boy, or you can act like your sisters and be a girl, and you ain't got no other choices with me. But you got all kind of choices with your own people. Even though your own people are really not your own people, they are mine too. But you can kill them. You can tell them, ain't nobody gonna disrespect you. Well, you tell that to other black people, boy. Well, don't you ever even think it in my presence. You don't even have to say it. Don't you even act like you might be thinking that, or you're gonna find out what hell is. And you know what? The white supremacists have proven that they can deliver on that message every time, and I don't care who you are, if you're black on this planet. When you really put them to an acid test, they have so far proven that nobody will take them on, because nobody knows how to, including Neely Fuller. I'm just trying to find out. I'm in their prison too. I was born in their prison too. So to get to the crux of what we're talking about here, for black males, we're talking about manhood. And it's not going to happen, folks. As long as you have the system of white supremacy in place and not having a system of justice. This is why rather than run around killing each other. That's not going to help.
Sorry, family, I was muted. Family, shout out to Carlito's Way over at Hip Hop Cartoons. Because like I said, it's because of these cartoons and things like this that he'd actually been doing that he's brought Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. to a whole new audience. And you can see that people do appreciate it. People do love it. Now, family, one of the things that happens once we have a great person from our culture pass away, a lot of their works start to get bought up. And some people will buy it low, and then they will sell it for a whole different price. For example, when you go to look up Neely Fuller's books, you can see here $86, $58, $74, $88. So a lot of these white supremacists, they would purchase these books and then they will resell them at a high price. And the reason behind this is because, and this happens with a lot of books and a lot of research overall when it comes to Black Americans, they're trying to price us out of the information. The same thing when you're trying to track your lineage and then you hit a brick wall because you got to now start paying for information, paying for different records and things like that, which all should be public record. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to price us out. So, family, if you are interested in purchasing Neely Fuller's works, and it's a trio of works, I believe. It's 3 different books, but they're all the same book. It's basically a series, if that makes any sense, because one book plays on the next book and the next book plays on, one book plays on the previous book and the new book plays on the previous one before that. But if you're looking, then come here to Project Justice, Neely Fuller's site, and you can purchase his works for reasonable prices. $22.95, $24.95, $29.95. And like I said, this one's out of stock, so you might have to find that one somewhere else. But the original and then the expanded edition, they are in stock. But I wanted to give you that. But with all of that, family, Neely Fuller shall live on. Dr. Neely Fuller shall live on. Not just through his works, but through each and every one of us. And I want to stress to you, if you don't know, if you have not gone and, looked into Dr. Neely Fuller Jr., please do so. You're doing yourself a disservice if you have not yet. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you can be notified whenever videos like this drop. Please make sure you're hitting that like and share button so we can beat up the algorithm. Make sure we get this message out to the ears that need to hear. And if you have not done so yet, please make sure you click that link in the description. Go to change.org and put your signature on the petition for reparations. With that being said, family, rest in power to Dr. Neely Fuller. The doors of the church are now closed. Peace, family.
My grandfather built this country, man. He fought wars for it. And most places he went wouldn't let him sit down and get a cup of coffee. I can't even catch a cab in New York. You know, it doesn't matter how many degrees I get. All you people see is color. Your grandfather was an immigrant. You're American. My grandfather was born here, Duke. And you people still look at me as just another nigga.
I know that the government, whatever, can't stand us black people. He's doing everything in the world to make black man be extinct. But I'm going to tell you one thing. Us black people going to survive. So fuck everybody. I'm off.